Alright, this will be chapter 8 of The Gathering of Soldiers. And based on how many pages there are, let's see. So there's like 14 pages. So I'll divide this by divide into two different videos and post them up. Because last time I tried to push a 45-minute one. Yeah, I thought I was dying at the end. It was really hard, so I couldn't have a better and get a better quality one out there. So, anyways, chapter 8 is called Food, Joy, and Discussions, and this will be about their ships ride down the Sakarya River. And before I start, let me just bring out the disclaimer again. Make sure that I zoom this through. There you go. There you see the zoomed in one. And yep. And then gonna make sure to zoom in again. Alright, you see everybody now. Okay, so let's begin. Hey kid, where did you go? Thomas said when Apossius walked back. I went to the front deck to talk to Lord Pericles, Apossius said. Thomas took a sip out of his wineskin and muttered out his joyful remark. He then raised his eyebrows. What did you say to him? Apossius sat down. I asked how he was able to pull off his escape. He just timed it so right, so I was shocked at his abilities. Thomas shrugged. Yeah, but it's nothing unusual though. He has done this many times. Hey, Pasio sniffed the air. What's that smell? Other guys got hungry, so they heat up the stove back there and they're cooking whatever they raided from the town. Oh, that reminds me. Thomas looked around him and grabbed a large bowl. Here's this large wooden bowl and some beef and lamb chops. We cut them down when you're gone, so all you need to do is cook them for us at the stove. Thomas handed over the bowl to Apossius. Thus, Apossius, being the newbie in the group, obliged to the demands and went forth to the stove. There were soldiers cooking their food, many of them crowded together. Therefore, Apossius patiently waited for his turn in the back of the line which had already formed. Hey kid, where'd you get that bunch of meat? One veteran soldier said. Apossius noticed that he was a captain due to a badge on the left chest and the shoulders of his armor. Captain, my group's leader gave them to me to cook. The captain smiled. You know, four of us fixed up that stove, so you owe us a portion of that meat in return for us letting you use that stove. He pointed at his group members. Okay, sure, just please don't take too much since my leader will get angry, Pasu said. No worries, kid. We're collecting from all those men in front of you, so we won't be needing much help from anybody, the captain said. After a while, some more soldiers came behind them to wait. So the captain proceeded to tell them about the stipulations in using the stove. It was a long while before he was finally able to use a stove, but he realized that he had forgotten something. It was a pan. Of course, he would need a pan if he's supposed to cook something. He only had a large bowl, but that was wood, so that would be useless. He looked behind him and noticed that the line had gotten longer. He was in despair, but someone came behind him and tapped his shoulder. Do you need something, child? He was a tall soldier and was holding a pan on his left hand while there was a bundle of chopped vegetables on the other, ready to be cooked. Gosh, why is everyone calling me kid? And now, child? What am I to them? However, Passius realized that he had seen the soldier before. He was another officer who lived with him in the same room. Officer Kai? Is that you? Passius looked up at the man. Oh, yes, and you are, Officer Kai said. I'm Apacius. Well, great. Can we share the pan? I have to cook this meat. Apacius looked at the pan. Of course. We could even share food at the end. They cooked food together and got to know more about each other. Officer Kai said that he was knocked out during the street fight where Lord Pericles made the shield wall push. Passios told him about what he did everywhere else, but not about the incident at the wagons. When the cooking was over, they gave a small portion to the veteran soldier and his group, then decided that they'll all eat together at the place where Thomas, Ephraim, and Seth were sitting around. I'm back! Passios showed the food to Thomas. Thomas quickly opened his eyes from that. Oh, finally! I'm starving right now. Captain Thomas, did you just get drunk again? Officer Kai said. Oh, well, duh. I can't live without these strong drinks. Here you go. Have some if you want. Thomas laid out more skins full of wine and other liquor for anyone to drink. Thomas, Officer Kai's group wants to join us for a meal, and I couldn't have cooked all this if it wasn't for him, so can they join? Pasio said. Oh, sure, why not? Thomas couldn't go far with his talk. Wait, how is he addressing you by your name instead of title first? Officer Kai looked irritated. Captain, you know that this isn't his first time addressing you like this. Also, Seth doesn't do it either. Thomas calmly looked at Officer Kai. Kai, think about it. They're in my group and converse with me a lot, so wouldn't you think it'll be awkward if they have to say my title every time they call me? Thomas grinned when Officer Kai flinched due to an unexpected response. Ah, I get why you're confused. It's because you have no one above you in your small group, and I find it strange that your guys call you with the title. Officer Kai nodded his head. Yes, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Thomas sighed. Not really, because by doing that, friendly bonds could only be made to a certain extent, since title is like a stumbling block which is in the way of creating a stronger relationship. Even though I may seem like an angry drunkard most of the time, I know how to handle things as a leader. Thomas paused for a while since Ephraim and Seth were nodding their heads in agreement. Then he smiled in confidence. Lord Pericles does it too. His bodyguards and other platoon leaders address him by his name. Also, I noticed that Apacius calls other leaders as in captain, officer, commander, or other titles, so it's only me and Ephraim whom he just calls by my name. So, why don't you try that out too? Stop being like a father figure to them, and be their friend. I know that it'll seem awkward at first, but it'll get better eventually. Thomas said up straight to better face Officer Kai. Yes, Captain. Thanks for the advice, Officer Kai said. Ah, you don't need to thank me, Kai. Now, would you please hand us the food and bring your groupmates so we can break bread together? Thomas pointed at the ground in front of him so that Officer Kai and Apacios would place the pan and bowl full of meat and vegetables, then muttered at Seth to bring the bread. Ephraim looked at as Officer Kai walked away. I told him that many times before, but he never listened. Thanks for making that happen. You did a great thing. Oh, you too. You all don't need to thank me for this. All I did was just a simple conversation. Thomas looked embarrassed. Soon, Officer Kai's group joined them, and they all sat around in a circle. If you had kept track of your days, you'll surely know that today is Saturday, and we'll have the discussion right here, right now. Thomas started the group meeting. Everyone agreed to his suggestion, but Thomas slowly looked around as if something wasn't right. Wait, where's the other four? Thomas squinted his eyes, trying to look for others. Oh, them? Lord Pericles called them in for a meeting. I think he noticed that they weren't really active on the battlefield and didn't even help the melee soldiers who were getting beaten up on that street. He's going to remove the officer title from the group leader and rebuke them, saying that he doesn't deserve it anymore, and that they did ill to other soldiers. So they all come under your direct command now, Officer Kai said. Thomas scratched his head and grimaced. Oh, good grief, that's sad. Now there's more work for me. He sighed in frustration. After a while, Thomas decided to change up the conversation. Anyways, we all agree that the Lord blessed us today by sparing all our lives in the battle, right? Thomas paused to take a drink from his wineskin and listened to various mutters and remarks of agreement. Looking back at our main event today, some of you may have been rather against such massacres. However, if we recall from the Bible regarding King David's story, and how he went to war on his many neighboring kingdoms in order to secure his country's safety. What we have just accomplished is a justified action. Don't be ashamed of killing the infidels. I notice that some of you have hesitated here and there, but you don't need to be like that. For the Lord permits such killing and isn't against it, for he is the man of war himself. Everyone muttered out their amen to Thomas' speech. I can't hear you. Thomas looked around, demanding louder answers. Amen! Everyone said out loud. That's right. And now, Ephraim, would you like to continue on and add some of your words into our discussion? Thomas passed the speech staff to Ephraim. If you're wondering what the speech staff is, it's more like a stout wooden stick which a man would use while sitting down and talking to the audience. When someone is holding this, immediate attention is required on that person. Those who don't give attention to him would have to spend time by themselves for a while away from the group until the group agrees to send someone to him to allow his return. So this fear of loneliness forces the soldiers to obey this guideline. The staff would come to the correct height for an average man to keep his hands upon the top end, while the bottom end is on the ground, and his body will be comfortable sitting down supporting his upper body with it while leaning forward to face those around him. Pasius heard more about it later from Ephraim, and it was he who started it when Seth came. Since Thomas and Ephraim thought that there should be some kind of prestigious activity for them to do in order to keep their group together. So, we all need to thank the Lord Almighty in bringing all of us here today at this moment, since He gives us rightful moments to have fruitful discussions amongst ourselves. I will then start off by giving my thoughts to what we've done so far. When some of the other soldiers had rounded up the kids, the medium melee infantry's platoon leaders decided to take the kids and wagons back to the ships so that they could load them up. I acknowledge and appreciate their sacrifice because if they didn't do that in time, then we wouldn't have been able to prepare the defense in time. Also, it's because even though they had a clear right to raid more, they chose not to. And that takes a great willpower to accomplish, since who would be willing to let go of the chance to raid? Ephraim paused for a while since others were muttering their amen. Those two platoon leaders, who we often see as the ones who bicker the most, actually cooperate when the necessity arises. And that attitude is what we want to keep in this organization. No matter how much we may call each other names and fight with one another, we must cooperate from time to time because we need each other. I believe that's what I learned today. He said and looked at Pasius to hand the staff while everyone else was giving a grievance. Do you want to say anything? It's up to you. Pasius gazed curiously at the staff. Sure, why not? But can you tell me why you guys hold this wooden stick while speaking? It's called speech staff, and the one who's speaking at the time gets to hold it. Nobody else speaks while that person is speaking. If anyone has a question on that person, he would raise his hand, the speaker then points the staff at him, and he gets the permission to speak. If the speaker doesn't point the staff to that person, then he has to respect the speaker's right to continue on with his speech without interruptions. When the speaker is not formally speaking, then everyone else is free to exchange talk amongst each other. So this flexibility helps in flowing the conversation very well. But keep in mind, when the speaker raises the staff to speak, then it's time for everyone to stop speaking and listen to the speaker. Furthermore, this is a great equalizer in the group, and everyone is bound to its rules. Ephraim handed over the speech staff. Oh, interesting. Pausius felt the smoothness of the staff and enjoyed its texture. Before that, Pausius, we never had a chance to listen to your past, so can you tell us about it? It's what every newcomer has to do so that we all could know more about each other. You don't have to tell us anything, just the ones that you feel comfortable sharing, Thomas said. This time, since Apasios didn't start speaking, it was alright for Thomas to cut in like that. And since it was an important piece of information, it was totally justified for him to say it. Okay, thanks for asking, Thomas. I wanted to share it since way back. After that, Apostios got himself into the speaking position just as Ephraim did it, leaning forward while sitting down and putting his hand on the top end of the staff. I was born in a village nearby Corinth. My dad was a farmer and had a plot of land for his own, and my mom was a cook in a local shop. So we were quite well off compared to other farming kids whose parents didn't own their land. When I turned 14, my parents sent me to a monastery to be educated. It was called Old Creek Monastery, and I lived there for 3 years with various monks. I was allowed to go out from time to time to meet up with my friends. That was about it. I was pretty much confined to it and learned to live like other monks. Then, later, they sent me away with a messenger from Constantinopolis, who later met up with somebody from the city barracks. And then I met up with Helios and Adam, who brought me here, and Pausius noticed that a soldier had raised his hand, so he pointed his staff at the soldier. After a slight nod, the soldier started speaking. Pausius, did you have the note before you came here? Oh, yes, I failed to mention that. Anyways, I had a sword master back in the monastery. His name was Heraclius, and he gave me his note, which was up to him to use. However, he gave it to me, saying that he will never need it. And he also gave his sword and buckler, Apasius said. Seth raised his hand this time, so Apasius pointed the staff at him. Now, I want to interrupt. Is it okay, Apasius? Okay, good. Then, Officer Kai, shouldn't you introduce your members to Apasius? Remember that Apasius talked with them, but didn't really get to know them, even though they all lived in the same room with us and sailed together on our ship. Because we had a rather busy and boring past 4 days. Seth spoke softly so as not offend Officer Kai. Sure, I'll do it. Officer Kai looked around at his groupmates to see who to introduce first. Hey, Apasius, this man here is Undel. Ephraim and I helped to recruit him from amongst the city infantries. We spied on him and all that. He uses a gun, and he's very good at it mostly because he can reload very fast compared to others. He is part Saracen, just like Ephraim, but he isn't half, since only one of his grandparents is a Saracen. He is decent in melee and helps out the engineers in our organization whenever he has a chance. Officer Kai paused for a while for Apasius to exchange greetings with Andel. Apasius noticed that Andel was the one who had asked him a question earlier. He had a similar atmosphere around him, just like how Ephraim has been, who was a man with an agenda of his own, which wasn't really friendly towards other people. Thus, Apasius could only assume that Andel must have been under the influence of Ephraim. Then he gave Andel a slight nod to hopefully give him a message that he understands. Andel responded back with his nod, and Apasius somehow felt that Andel understood the message. With that, Officer Kai resumed introducing other members. Okay then, here's Edwin, and this guy, Ephraim, Captain Thomas, and I had actually enticed away from one of the medium melee infantry platoons. One day he had received a near-death wound through his stomach, so he lost so much courage and valor to fight with them. That's how he came over here, and he was enjoying our company ever since. Through his family stories, we could assume that he has ancestors who had lived in the Emirate of Sicily, and possibly one of the emirs too. This is just a pure guess, but our notion regarding the Emirate is almost certain, telling you that it's not just Romans here. Now he also uses a gun, and it seems that he's still better at melee due to his past achievements with his sword. We call his sword a fiery sword, because it seems to burn with rage along with its owner's feelings during the fight. For his side job, he helps out the blacksmiths in Principal Town in fixing weapons. Officer Kai again waited for Apasios to exchange greetings. Alright then, lastly, here's Lucy. He's full of charades and totally weird too. I just can't believe that he's still a kid who plays around with the idea of holy sword. He polishes his sword as often as he could because he genuinely believes that his sword contains a small fragment of the original holy sword of King Arthur. Well, that belief has helped him to be a dedicated soldier, so I don't blame him for adoring it. Anyways, he's the only one who has a clearer history than the other two. He's of Bulgarian descent and lived in Burgas his whole life until he came here. Furthermore, he's a great scholar, so he often spends his time studying with the staff members. Alright, so um, I'm going to end it here. And I shall be continuing with it next time. So let's see. Yep, exactly. I'm going to end here and I shall continue on the next time. Alright, so thank you very much for listening. And I'll see. I'll see.